This is Writer's Theory. I'm James Winterthorn, and in this video, I'll discuss my 5 techniques for writing dialogue. When I think about writing stories and writing fiction in general, there are several components of prose and fiction writing that come to mind. And one of the most important ones is dialogue. So the words characters actually say. We put them in quotations so it's clear. We add tags to them so we know who's talking. But it's ultimately what our characters are saying. It's very important for driving narratives forward, for understanding theme, for getting to know characters and character development. Vital to most stories. And you think in Hollywood or when we're watching video content, if we're to know what's happening in the story, we really need the dialogue to inform us. So dialogue is a very important aspect of writing. And in this video, I want to share 5 techniques to help you with your dialogue. So number 5, and this is here namely because I tend to devalue this while I'm drafting and change my mind as I'm editing or rewriting. And that is remember the tags. So when you're writing and a character says something, the reader needs to know who's saying what. And as I'm writing, I tend to, because I know very clearly that character A says this, character B says this, and I feel like I'm being redundant or repetitive with the he said, she said constantly over and over again, even if I'm adjusting it. So when I go back and rewrite or edit manuscripts, I always have to add more tags. So this number 5 might just be a reminder to myself more than it is to you. Maybe you're already great at this. But remember that the reader does need to know who's talking. And you can get creative with the tag, so it doesn't have to be he said, he asked constantly over and over again. You can put he remarked or he questioned or any number of options there. But remember that if you're going to skip a tag, it does need to be very clear who's talking because your reader will get confused. So remember the tags is my number 5 piece of advice on how to write dialogue. Number 4 is keep dialogue clear and understandable. And so what I mean by this is sometimes we have unique characters with unique voices. Really, like every character should sound different and a unique person. And sometimes we might take that a little too far. And we might want to have somebody have a really thick and pronounced accent. And it's not like you can't do this, but I would avoid over punctuating, shortening of words. I would avoid writing heavy accents into characters, and not because you should, worry about representing a character well, because you have these cool characters and we really want them to sound unique. But if what you're writing is confusing your reader, then you're detracting from that character's profile. So the dialogue shouldn't detract from the character. And if it's hard to read and it's hard to understand, you're only going to slow your reader down. They're not going to think that this character is cool or unique or fun. They're going to say either oh, this is challenging to read. Let me really focus. Or they're going to pass over the dialogue and try to get the gist of it and not really absorb what your character is saying. And if that character is driving your narrative forward, they might miss important things because there's too many punctuation marks or too many shortened words. So I would avoid heavy accents. You're going to see this advice a lot in different writing books and advice from other writers. Um, and it's one of these things that I only learned from having done it myself, where I wanted to have a character with a really thick Cajun Louisiana accent. And I knew what I wanted to say. And I thought what I was writing was very clear, but it was hard to read. And everybody I put it in front of agreed that it was just more of a hassle to read it than it was to try to enjoy the character. So that's why avoiding heavy accents and writing clear and understandable dialogue is number 4 on this list. My number 3 bit of advice on how to write dialogue is more of how to use dialogue. And that is to drive your narrative or your plot forward with the words of your characters. So if you are tempted to use exposition to explain parts of your world or what has happened so far in the story, instead of the narrator telling the reader what happened, have your characters tell each other. And that way we can see through actual events in the story what has happened previously or what we can expect coming up. We can foreshadow with dialogue. We can use all the techniques of fiction writing in the dialogue format. So use dialogue to tell the story, to drive the plot forward. This might sound obvious, but I find myself as I'm writing to have to remember to do this. And I find when I use this technique, when the characters are the ones pulling the story along through what they're saying, I enjoy that content so much more. So it might seem simple, but remember to use the words of your characters to move your story forward. And so using dialogue to drive your plot forward is number 3 on this list. Number 2 is an actual way to understand dialogue and to write it. So up to this point, I've told you things about dialogue that you should use, that you should avoid, how dialogue functions in stories. This one is an actual, how do I learn how to write dialogue? Like, sure, James, like you told us all these things that are great about it, but I still don't understand how to write it. I'm not good at writing dialogue. And so what do I do? And so number 2 on my list of techniques to write dialogue is listen to people. So I would recommend going to a public place where you're confident there are going to be people. So go to a coffee shop, go to a restaurant, and quietly, not creepily, eavesdrop on people's conversations and just listen to how people talk and pick up what's different between restaurant goer 1 and restaurant goer 2. And you could even have a journal and be writing it out as long as that's not weird. And really see how real people talk and interact with each other. You might be surprised at what dialogue looks like from real conversations. That doesn't mean that you should write everything this way, but you really start to understand how people talk and really start to inject authenticity into your dialogue. You're not going to put all their verbal pauses in there, and you still want to make the dialogue readable and impactful, but listening to how people talk is a great way to be inspired to write dialogue. So go out into the world and hear people and hear how they talk. And so listening to people and writing that down is my number 2 bit of advice. Now, before I get to number 1, if you're enjoying this type of content, if you've enjoyed this list about techniques on dialogue and you would like to see more, please like and subscribe, and you can see future videos about my advice on writing. You can follow my journeys on novel writing. And if you're interested in supporting the channel, I don't have a Patreon group. That might change one day in the future. I don't know. But go over to Writer's Theory and see, check out my website there. We have some novel writing products. Maybe you'd be interested in one of those. No pressure, but if you want to support the channel, like and subscribe, and check out my other activities on writerstheory.com. So for number 1, this is also a technique to help just write dialogue. And this might be more of a technique that you're not necessarily using in stories and you're just going to get used to writing. And that is to write your own voice. Listen to how you speak and write that down. And write down yourself having a conversation with another person or even with yourself. Use the words that you envision yourself using and write the way that you speak. This is very powerful for getting comfortable writing dialogue. Again, because it's your voice, you are not necessarily writing in a character's voice, not yet anyway. But you'll start to understand the cadence and the pattern of your own speaking. And this is a great technique for just getting used to the activity of writing dialogue. If you want to apply this to a greater story, you want to tell a story with this technique, it's the easiest way to do this is to simply tell a story in first person. So this is where you're using pronouns like I, me, and my. And what you can do in this case, and this is, you can have a lot of fun writing this way, is tell a story from your own perspective. Like maybe put yourself in a strange or unique situation, and write both the narrative, the descriptions, any exposition, and certainly the dialogue in the way that you talk. And you'll start to grasp better how to use techniques like this, how to write dialogue in your own voice. And once you've done this, you'll be able to experiment more and branch out into different speaking patterns and hearing other people speak, and just really understanding how to write dialogue. Now, I thought I would go and do a little research, and there's lots of books out there on how to write dialogue, but I wanted to do this video from my perspective, how I approached writing dialogue through my writing journey. And so those are the 5 techniques that I used to write dialogue or to learn how to write dialogue. I'm curious, what are your favorite techniques to learn how to write dialogue? What are the things that you've done in the past to grasp this technique and to share with others to help them on their writing journey? So please comment below. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching all the way to the end, and I will see you in the next video. This is me changing what I would say as a negative, rather than just talking and